My name is Rachel Morales. I'm 31 now, and for most of my life, I did everything I could to stay close to my brother, Nathan. Even when we began to grow apart, I still tried. So when I got an invitation to his big birthday bash last fall, I was actually happy. I thought maybe we were finally reconnecting. The dinner was held at a swanky rooftop venue in downtown Austin, Texas. Everything sparkled, crystal glasses, polished silverware, sweeping city views. But when I arrived, I noticed something odd. My name card was tucked between two of Nathan's friends' kids, ages 6 and 9, at a side table decorated with crayons and coloring books. Nathan's wife, Lana, raised her champagne glass toward me and said with a tight smile, we had to make space for the important guests at the main table. Nathan gave a short laugh and added, hope you don't mind watching the little ones. I looked down. No plate. No glass. Just a folded napkin and a juice box. Nathan's eyes met mine briefly before he turned away. And Lana? She was already whispering something to the couple seated beside her. I stood up, picked up the wrapped gift I had brought, and said, calmly but clearly, well, then I guess I'm not staying. Nathan looked stunned for half a second, but said nothing. If you're watching this, leave a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever had to walk away from family just to protect your dignity. Growing up in a modest 3-bedroom house in El Paso, Nathan and I were thick as thieves. Only 2 years apart, we were inseparable. We shared video game controllers, defended each other during schoolyard spats, and sat side by side every Sunday at church. He taught me how to skateboard, I helped him pass Spanish class. That bond, so unshakable in childhood, is what made this rift hurt more than I ever expected. Things started to shift during college. I enrolled at a local community college, planning to transfer later while working part-time as a barista. Nathan, though, got into a well-known business school in New York. His world expanded fast. His roommates wore tailored jackets and drove cars they didn't need loans for. He interned at a hedge fund and started dating Lana, whose family owned several wineries in Napa Valley. When Nathan moved back to Texas to help run Lana's family business, the change was complete. He wore watches that cost more than my rent. Their house was gated. Their dinner parties felt like press events. And I stayed in education. After finishing my degree, I took a full-time position teaching 5th grade at Valley Oaks Elementary. I love what I do. I really do. But somewhere along the line, to Nathan and Lana, I became just a teacher. When our parents passed away in a car accident 3 years ago, I hoped the grief might bring us closer again. But without Mom's casseroles or Dad's corny Sunday jokes to glue us together, the cracks deepened. Still, I kept showing up. Every holiday. Every invite. Even when I felt like a stranger. Until that night on the rooftop. That was the last dinner I ever attended at their house. And honestly, I've never felt more at peace. I kept trying, even when the distance between us became undeniable. For Nathan's birthday and Christmas, I sent thoughtful gifts, books I knew he loved as a kid, a hand-painted portrait of our childhood dog, even custom cufflinks engraved with our late father's initials. His responses? Increasingly impersonal. Gift cards. Sometimes not even with a message, just a code in an email. The tension built in the months leading up to his 32nd birthday. Nathan canceled our lunch plans 3 times in a row. Always last minute. Always vague, something about Lana's charity events or rescheduling for a golf retreat with her father's business partners. When I did manage to catch him on the phone, the calls felt like monologues about granite countertops and imported tiles. He'd end them with, anyway, I've got another thing, talk soon. Still, when a formal invitation arrived for his birthday dinner at the Palm Garden, one of Austin's most exclusive rooftop restaurants, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was his way of reaching out. I spent 2 weeks looking for the perfect gift. Eventually, I found a vintage leather-bound copy of Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman, his favorite poet in high school. Our mom used to read it to us on the porch during summer storms. I had it embossed with our parents' initials and wrapped it in deep green paper, tying it with a silk ribbon. It wasn't just a book. It was a memory, a bridge to who we were. A symbol of what I was still hoping to preserve between us. I even splurged on a dark green satin dress I'd had my eye on for months. I curled my hair, wore makeup I almost never touched, and practiced small talk in case I ended up seated near Lana's investment friends. I was determined to go in open-hearted, ready for peace. As I pulled into the restaurant's roundabout, my old sedan looked wildly out of place among sleek black Teslas and polished European imports. The valet's raised eyebrows said it all. I handed him my keys anyway and clutched the gift box tightly as I stepped inside. The Palm Garden was glowing with understated elegance, glass-paneled walls framing the skyline, flickering candlelight at every table, and a live quartet playing jazz in the background. The host confirmed Nathan's reservation and led me through the main space, past clinking glasses and low laughter, to a roped-off private section. There they were. Nathan, in a crisp navy suit, smiling with that effortless confidence he developed over the years. Lana shimmered in a champagne-colored gown, laughing easily as she looped her hand through his arm. Around them clustered about 24 guests, all impeccably styled and clearly at ease in this world of quiet luxury. As I stood on the threshold, still holding the gift like a lifeline, a strange sinking feeling crept into my chest. I hadn't even sat down yet, but something told me I was already out of place. Nathan spotted me first. "Rachel, hey, you made it." His smile was polite, but it didn't quite touch his eyes. He leaned in for a quick hug, but Lana slid in between us, air-kissing beside my cheek without making contact. "Careful," she said with a soft laugh. "Don't want to mess this up." She gestured to her perfectly contoured face before turning to Nathan. "Look who decided to join us after all." Nathan's handshake was brief, formal. "Nice of you to come," he said. The tone suggested the opposite. "Rachel was just saying she wasn't sure you'd make it," Lana added, her voice slightly teasing. "I wouldn't miss my brother's birthday," I replied, offering Nathan the wrapped copy of Leaves of Grass, the one I had searched so long to find. "Oh," he said, taking it with a distracted thanks and immediately placing it on a table behind him already stacked with glossy shopping bags from high-end brands, Hermès, Cartier, things I couldn't even afford to browse online. Before I could say more, Lana was pulled away by a woman with a blowout and a Rolex. Nathan offered a small shrug and said, "Let me show you your seat." I followed him across the dining area, expecting to be led to the long table elegantly arranged under the string lights. But instead, we veered sharply to the right, toward a corner of the room partially sectioned off by decorative planters. The table was smaller and lower. It had paper placemats with games printed on them and little buckets of crayons in the center. A high chair stood at one end. My confusion gave way to dread. "This is the kids' table," I said quietly, my stomach tightening. Nathan didn't deny it. He just gave a crooked smile. "Only important guests sit with the adults," he said, loud enough that a few nearby conversations stilled. A couple heads turned toward us. "Lana thought you'd be more comfortable here," he added. "You know, being a teacher and all." The heat rushed to my face as I stood frozen, holding my purse and gift wrap like a shield while murmurs drifted from the adult table. There, wine was being poured into crystal goblets. Here, sippy cups waited for toddlers who hadn't even arrived yet. I looked across the room and saw Lana watching us. She didn't say a word, just turned back to her conversation, laughing at whatever someone had just whispered. "There must be some mistake," I said under my breath. "I'll talk to Lana." Nathan shrugged. "Suit yourself." But she made the seating chart. Every step back across the restaurant felt like a slow walk through molasses. I reached Lana, who was mid-conversation but gave me a sidelong glance. "Problem?" she asked with a bored tone. "I was seated at the kids' table," I said, keeping my voice low. "Is there somewhere else I can sit?" "The adult table's full, with our friends and Nathan's colleagues," she said, sipping her champagne. "I thought you'd understand." "Understand being humiliated?" My voice cracked despite my best effort. She rolled her eyes. "It's just a table, Rachel. Don't be dramatic." I swallowed hard. "Fine. Just have them set a place." Lana glanced toward Nathan, who had quietly rejoined us. Some silent exchange passed between them. "There's not a setting for you at either table," she said flatly. "We didn't think you'd really show. You said you were swamped with school." I RSVP'd yes 2 weeks ago, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Well, she said with a dismissive shrug, I guess you're not that important. The words landed like a slap. Just grab a chair wherever. I'll have someone bring a plate. The casual cruelty of it all, her tone, the indifference, the audience, hit me harder than I expected. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a message. Loud and clear. In that moment, everything snapped into focus. The missing place setting hadn't been a mistake, it was intentional. A carefully orchestrated way to remind me of my place, or rather, how far I had fallen from their place. It was a performance, and I was cast as the outsider. I looked at my brother, this polished, distant man in a designer suit who once helped me build blanket forts and sneak cookies from the kitchen, and I made my decision. Then I'm leaving, I said evenly, reaching for the green-wrapped gift still sitting untouched on the table. Happy birthday, Nathan. He froze, clearly not expecting that. For a second, something flickered in his expression, hesitation? Regret? But it vanished behind Lana's perfectly timed gasp. You're overreacting, she said sharply, her arms folded. As always. If you walk out now, Nathan added coldly, don't expect another invitation. I held his gaze. I wouldn't want one. I turned and walked toward the exit, my heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Behind me, I heard the low hum of murmurs as conversations picked back up. Whether they were about me or the overpriced wine being served, I didn't know and didn't care. The valet blinked in surprise at my early return, but retrieved my car without a word. As I slid into the driver's seat and pulled away, the lights of the Palm Garden faded behind me. Only then, with the doors locked and the gift bag still in my lap, did the tears come. The drive home passed in a haze of red lights and blurred vision. I don't even remember taking the freeway exit to my neighborhood. I just remember the ache in my chest and the shame burning behind my eyes. When I reached my apartment, I didn't bother with the lights. I kicked off my shoes and sank onto the couch, still wearing the dress I had so carefully chosen for the occasion. The locket sat in its box, mocking me from the coffee table, a token of hope that had no place in Nathan's world. Memories hit me like punches. Nathan showing me how to tie my shoes, watching scary movies under a blanket, making me hot chocolate the day I didn't get into grad school. I remembered how tightly he'd held my hand during our parents' funeral, how we'd laughed through our tears on the drive home afterward. Now, all of that felt like it belonged to someone else. This wasn't the first time I had been slighted by Nathan and Lana, just the most calculated and public. Last Christmas, they handed out luxury, personalized gifts to everyone, while I got a Visa gift card with the name Rachel Morris scrawled in cheap ink. At their housewarming party, Derek mocked my shoes loud enough for his friends to laugh. Just last month, Nathan had bailed on our meeting to plan our parents' memorial, texting 2 hours later that they were stuck at the spa. Every time, I'd told myself it didn't matter, that he was just busy, that Lana was complicated. But tonight tore away every excuse. Nathan didn't forget me. He dismissed me. My phone buzzed in the dark. A text from Kara, my best friend since college, lit up the screen. Just heard what happened, the message read. Madison was working tonight. I'm coming over with wine and cookies. No arguments. I had forgotten Madison, another teacher at Valley Oaks and part-time server at the Palm Garden, was picking up shifts this weekend. News had traveled fast. Too fast. My phone buzzed again. Then again. And again. That was so awkward. Are you okay? Nathan's changed. Lana seems intense. Maybe you should have just gone along with it. Families fight sometimes. That last one stung. The implication that I should have just swallowed my pride to avoid making a scene was exactly the kind of logic that had allowed Nathan and Lana to disrespect me for years. True to her word, Kara arrived 30 minutes later, sweatshirt, messy bun, and armed with chocolate chip cookies, a bottle of Cabernet, and the kind of loyalty only a decade-long friendship can offer. She took one look at my red-rimmed eyes and pulled me into a hug. That absolute witch, she muttered, heading straight to the kitchen. And don't even get me started on that smug jerk she married. I sank onto the couch, pulling the throw blanket over my lap. I keep thinking maybe I did something to deserve it, I said quietly. Why else would they treat me like this? Kara paused mid-pour, her jaw tightening. No. Stop that. Right now. You didn't deserve any of that. No one deserves to be humiliated, especially not by their own brother. She handed me a generous glass and sat beside me. This is about them, Rachel. Not you. Nathan's lost in Lana's twisted idea of success, and you're just a reminder of who he used to be. As the hours passed and the wine bottle emptied, I began to open up about things I had never said out loud. The time Nathan told me about our cousin's wedding after it had happened, claiming he forgot to forward the invite. The housewarming dinner where Lana talked about passive income while Nathan stared directly at me and asked if I was still grading spelling tests for a living. The Christmas when Lana wrinkled her nose at the scarf I knitted for our mom and said, "Handmade things are sweet, for preschoolers." Kara's face darkened. Why have you never told me any of this? Because saying it out loud makes it real, I whispered. And on their own, these things sound small. But put together. It's a pattern, she said firmly. A pattern of emotional abuse. And it stops now. We talked until nearly 3 a.m., polishing off the second bottle and every last cookie. Despite the emotional exhaustion, something had shifted inside me. The guilt and confusion I'd carried for years began to loosen, replaced by something unfamiliar but strong. Clarity. Boundaries. Self-worth. As Kara stood to leave, I looked at her and admitted, I don't want to cut him out. He's my brother. But I can't keep pretending this is okay. She pulled me into another hug. You don't have to decide tonight. Just promise me one thing. Don't ever let them make you feel small again. After she left, I sat in the silence of my apartment, the remains of wine glasses and cookie crumbs around me. Something had broken inside me that night, but something stronger was being built in its place. Not bitterness, not vengeance, a boundary, a line I would never let them cross again. I set the green-wrapped gift, Leaves of Grass, still untouched on my bookshelf. Not as a symbol of rejection, but as a quiet reminder of my own intentions. I had chosen it with care, with love, with meaning. Qualities that Nathan and Lana had so casually dismissed last night. Their loss, not mine. As I finally began getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. You made a scene tonight. We need to talk tomorrow. I'll stop by after tennis. No apology. No acknowledgement of what happened. Just the assumption that I'd be waiting, ready to listen on his schedule. For the first time in our lives, I didn't respond. I turned off my phone, crawled into bed, and tried to steel myself for a confrontation that was long overdue. The knock came at exactly 11 a.m. the next morning. Sharp, precise, like everything Nathan did. I had been awake for hours, alternating between rehearsing what I wanted to say and spiraling into all the ways this could go wrong. Would he gaslight me? Would Lana come too? Would he pretend none of it mattered? I opened the door to find Nathan standing there in designer tennis gear, sunglasses pushed up into his hair, holding a bottle of overpriced green juice. He looked immaculate, as always, except for the tight line in his jaw. He stepped inside without waiting. You could have answered my text, he said, placing the drink on my counter and casting a quick, dismissive glance around my living room. I was worried. Were you? I asked calmly, closing the door behind him. That would be a first. His eyes narrowed. If you brought me here just to be rude, I can go. You weren't invited, I replied, standing firm. You announced you were coming. He sighed dramatically and dropped onto the edge of my couch like he was doing me a favor. Look, I don't know why you're making such a big deal about last night. It was just a joke. A seating arrangement. It was humiliation, I said, my voice steady. You and Lana made sure I felt like an outsider in front of a room full of people. You're being too sensitive. No, I'm being honest. And this isn't just about last night. It's been years of this. Since you got with Lana. He rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. Of course you're blaming her. This isn't about blame. It's about how you've changed. The brother I knew wouldn't have watched someone he loved be ridiculed. The Nathan I grew up with wouldn't have let that happen. His polished facade cracked, just slightly. You have no idea what it's like, he muttered. Lana's family, they expect everything to be perfect. Every dinner, every photo, every guest list. I'm always being watched. Judged. It's exhausting. And I don't fit that picture, do I? I said softly. Is that it? I embarrass you now. He didn't answer. And that silence said everything. You've chosen a different path, he finally said. There's nothing wrong with being a teacher, Rachel. But let's be honest, we don't exactly live in the same world anymore. So you thought seating me at the kids' table was appropriate? I asked. Telling me I wasn't important enough for a place setting? Nathan flinched slightly. I didn't mean it that way, he said, though his eyes slid away from mine. The adult table really was full, with people Lana needs me to impress. And, honestly, I didn't think you'd want to sit through conversations about hedge funds and Napa real estate. That should have been my choice to make, I replied, my voice steady. Instead, you and Lana decided to humiliate me. Publicly. He stood up abruptly, pacing my small living room like a caged animal. You've always been so judgmental about my life. Looking down on me for wanting more. For enjoying things nicer than what Mom and Dad settled for. That twisted version of reality momentarily stunned me. I've never judged you for your success, Nathan. I've only wanted you to stop judging me for choosing something different. That's not true, he snapped, his voice sharp. You were always the golden child. The responsible one. The one who made all the right decisions. Do you even know what it felt like growing up in your shadow? The perfect daughter who never got in trouble. I stared at him, confused and suddenly exhausted. Is that what you've believed all this time? That I was the favorite? Of course, he said bitterly. Dad helped you buy your first car. Mom saved every award you ever got. And when I said I wanted to study art, they told me to pick something practical. I exhaled slowly. They helped me with the car because I was working 2 jobs to stay in school. And they encouraged you to go into finance because they wanted you to have options, not because they didn't believe in you. They were proud of both of us. Nathan turned toward the window, silent. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. Well, I have options now. Lana gave me everything I ever wanted. Something in his tone made me pause. Has she? I asked softly. Are you actually happy, Nathan? The question hung in the air. For a brief second, his polished expression cracked, and I saw something in his eyes that looked startlingly like doubt. Of course I'm happy, he said after a pause, but it sounded rehearsed. We have a beautiful home, a great circle of friends. We're living the life we always dreamed of. A perfect life where you treat your sister like an afterthought? His cheeks reddened. That's not fair. You're right, I said gently. None of this is fair. And I don't think that's the whole story. Nathan turned his back to me, staring out at the quiet street through my apartment window. The silence between us thickened until finally he spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. Lana's dad's firm is under investigation. Some of the accounts were frozen last month. We've had to scale back everything, but no one can know. If her family finds out, it's over for her. For us. Suddenly, it all made sense. The dinner. The posturing. The desperate need to perform perfection. Nathan, I said quietly, if you're in trouble. I can't help financially. But I am here. He spun around, eyes blazing. I don't need your pity. We'll be fine. Lana has connections. The way he said it didn't sound like reassurance. It sounded like a prayer. And in the meantime, you'll just keep pushing away the people who actually care about you, I said softly. The ones who don't give a damn about your address or your car or the label on your shoes. You don't understand the pressure, Nathan replied sharply. If we don't maintain our image, we lose everything. The invites dry up. The investors stop returning calls. The people who matter disappear. We become nobodies, I finished for him. He looked away. But only for a moment. I didn't mean it like that, he muttered. Yes, you did, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And that's why I left last night. Because I refused to let my own brother treat me like I'm invisible. Nathan's jaw tightened. He grabbed his gym bag off the floor and slung it over his shoulder, clearly done with the conversation. I came here today thinking you'd apologize, he said, walking toward the door. For making a scene. For embarrassing me in front of people who matter to my career. I stared at him, stunned. You want me to apologize to you? I asked. If you can't see how your outburst reflected badly on everyone, he began, his hand on the doorknob. Then we have nothing more to talk about, he finished. I found my voice just as he began to turn the handle. Nathan, if you walk out that door without acknowledging what you did, I can't promise I'll still be here when you decide you need your sister again. He paused. For the briefest, most painful moment, I thought he might turn around. Might finally choose our relationship over his image. Instead, he squared his shoulders. Goodbye, Rachel. The door closed with a soft, final click that echoed through the apartment. Not a slam, just a quiet ending. I stood in the center of my living room, shaking, my body flooded with adrenaline, my chest hollowed out by grief. I wasn't sure what hurt more, his pride or his indifference. The days after Nathan's visit blurred together in a fog. I called in sick on Monday, a rarity for me. The thought of standing in front of 28 third graders with enthusiasm I didn't feel was unbearable. By Tuesday, I forced myself back into the classroom. But I wasn't myself. "You seem off," Grace, the fourth-grade teacher next door, said gently during lunch. I offered her the short version of what happened, expecting the usual family is family sympathy. But Grace just stirred her salad and said, "Some relationships are toxic, even if they're blood. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is give yourself space." Her words stayed with me the rest of the day. I coasted through lessons on fractions and reading comprehension on autopilot. The students noticed my mood, growing restless and loud. By the last bell, I felt like I'd failed in every part of my life. That evening, searching for comfort, I opened a box from the back of my closet, a dusty plastic bin filled with old photo albums. Photos of me and Nathan as kids, grinning in matching holiday pajamas. Beach trips with our parents. Our college graduations. Memories of a bond that used to define me. Tucked behind the albums was a box I hadn't touched in years, the personal belongings I inherited after our parents died. Nathan had only taken a few valuables, our mom's jewelry, a vintage watch. I had kept the rest. Letters they wrote to each other during their courtship. Birthday cards we made as children. Their journals. I had never opened those journals. It felt too private. Too sacred. But now, maybe I needed to hear their voices again. Seeking comfort, and maybe answers, I carefully opened the most recent of my mother's journals. I hadn't touched them since her passing, but something about this moment felt right. A page dated just 3 months before the accident caught my eye. Worried about Nathan and his relationship with Lana. He's changing. Becoming someone I don't always recognize. Rachel tried to talk to him last week, but it ended in a terrible argument. I wish they'd find their way back to the closeness they once had. Family is too precious to lose over pride and appearances. Tears welled up again. She had seen it. Even then. She saw the change in Nathan, the strain between us, the role I had tried to play. She saw me trying and failing to bridge a growing distance I hadn't created. I kept reading through the entries from her final year. More concern about Nathan's increasing obsession with image and social status. But also, page after page, expressions of love and pride for my work. For me, Rachel works so hard. She pours her heart into her students. I just wish she wouldn't carry the weight of everything. Always the peacemaker. Always putting herself last. I'm scared she'll spend her life trying to fix what can't be fixed and forget to protect her own happiness. My kind-hearted daughter needs to remember she can't pour from an empty cup. Her words hit me like a sudden wave. Had I spent my entire adult life trying to be the glue? Holding broken things together while neglecting my own cracks? Had I been enabling Nathan and Lana, trying to make excuses, always smoothing over their sharpness with my own silence? The next morning, I called the school counselor, who referred me to a therapist specializing in family dynamics. Dr. Winters had an opening the following Thursday. I booked it. I needed someone objective, someone who could help me figure out whether my relationship with Nathan was worth saving or finally letting go. In the meantime, things at work worsened. I snapped at one of my students, Liam, for forgetting his homework. Then apologized and gave him 2 gold stars in a row. During a parent-teacher conference, I blinked completely on which math standards we were currently covering. It was embarrassing. That Friday, my principal, Diane, asked to speak with me privately. "You're one of our strongest teachers, Rachel," she said gently. "But something's clearly weighing on you. Do you want to talk about it?" The kindness in her voice shattered the wall I'd been holding up. Before I knew it, everything spilled out: the birthday dinner, the confrontation, the years of hurt I'd pushed down to keep the peace. She listened without judgment. Then she quietly said, "I haven't spoken to my brother in nearly 10 years. It was the hardest choice I ever made, but also the healthiest." Sometimes, the family we build for ourselves shows up more than the one we're born into. Her words echoed Kara's loyalty, Grace's empathy, Madison's concern. I wasn't alone. I had a community. And maybe for the first time, I was starting to believe that was enough. People who valued me for exactly who I was, not who they needed me to be to fit their narrative. That weekend, I began the painful but necessary process of revisiting every interaction I'd had with Nathan over the past 5 years. I combed through text threads, replayed old conversations in my head, and wrote out a timeline of moments, small and large, where he or Lana had deliberately diminished me. Seeing it all laid out like that was both validating and heartbreaking. What I had brushed off as isolated slights now revealed a clear pattern: increasing emotional distance, subtle jabs disguised as jokes, and a consistent undermining of my worth. By the time I met with Dr. Winters that Wednesday, I'd reached a difficult but liberating conclusion. I needed to establish boundaries with Nathan. Clear ones. Even if that meant significantly reducing or entirely pausing contact. Family estrangement is often seen as a failure, Dr. Winters said during our session. But it can actually be a healthy response to repeated emotional harm. The question isn't whether to maintain the relationship, it's what kind of relationship, if any, is healthy for you. I don't think Nathan wants a healthy relationship, I admitted. He wants me to play a role that validates his choices, that makes him feel superior. And that role harms your self-worth, she responded gently. Have you thought about what a version of the relationship with firm boundaries might look like? We spent the rest of the session mapping those boundaries out. No more accepting last-minute cancellations. No more tolerating passive-aggressive comments about my job or lifestyle. No more pretending Lana's rudeness was just a personality quirk. Setting boundaries isn't about punishment, Dr. Winters reminded me. It's about creating the space where a better relationship could eventually exist. But you need to be ready if he rejects that. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The future was still uncertain, but I was done walking in emotional circles. Whether or not Nathan and I ever reconciled, I knew one thing for sure: I was no longer willing to compromise my dignity for the illusion of closeness. That evening, I took the wrapped copy of Leaves of Grass, the gift I had once intended to give Nathan, and finally moved it off my bookshelf. I thought about returning it to the bookstore, but instead, I placed it in a drawer with a handwritten note to myself. Your love is real. Your effort was sincere. Their inability to accept it is not a reflection of your worth. It was a small gesture, but it felt like the beginning of something important, something healing. 2 months passed without a word from Nathan. The silence was strange at first, then freeing. I focused on my teaching, developing a new classroom storytelling unit that earned a surprise shout-out from the district superintendent. I joined a weekend hiking group and found joy in muddy boots, sore legs, and real conversations. And I finally said yes to dinner with Lucas, the 5th-grade science teacher with a crooked smile and a patient heart. Dr. Winters and I continued our weekly sessions. Each one peeled back another layer. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was building a life defined by my voice, not my brother's shadow. I was beginning to understand the tangled roots beneath it all, how our parents' well-intentioned but unbalanced support had planted quiet competition between us. How Nathan's insecurities had found fertile soil in Lana's obsession with image and success. And how my own hunger for approval had kept me tolerating behavior I should have walked away from years ago. You seem different, Kara noted one evening as we chopped vegetables together in my kitchen. I feel different, I admitted, the words catching me off guard. Like I've been carrying this weight for years, bending myself in every direction to keep a relationship with Nathan intact. And now that I've put it down, I can finally stand up straight. Have you heard from him? She asked gently, careful not to sound judgmental. Nothing directly, I said. But Madison told me she saw him and Lana arguing outside the Palm Garden last week. Apparently, it got heated. They left separately. I hadn't gone looking for updates. But Austin is smaller than it seems, and our social circles still had some overlap. Each tidbit brought a strange cocktail of relief and sadness, grateful not to be caught in the chaos anymore, but still aching at the edges. Then came the unexpected turning point. It was a rainy Tuesday in April. I had just finished a long day of back-to-back parent-teacher conferences and was zoning out in the produce aisle when I accidentally bumped carts with Elaine, one of Lana's close friends. "Rachel," she exclaimed, genuinely surprised. "Wow, it's good to see you." "You too," I replied, a little wary, unsure where her loyalty lay. "Have you been?" "Oh, hanging in," she said with a tired laugh. "Work's a mess, and honestly, all the drama with Nathan and Lana lately, it's exhausting." I tensed, waiting for her to accuse me of abandoning my brother. But instead, she lowered her voice. "Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but Nathan's not himself. Lana's controlling everything. She screens his calls, cancels plans he makes. A few of us have tried to check in, but it's like she's built a wall around him." The knot in my stomach twisted tighter. "I didn't realize it had gotten that bad," I said quietly. Elaine looked around before adding, "There are rumors. Something about financial issues at Lana's father's firm, maybe worse. Nothing confirmed yet, but it doesn't look good. And the way she's monitoring everything, his money, his phone, his social life, it's unsettling." A surge of concern rushed through me, swift and strong, like instinct. Whatever pain Nathan had caused me didn't erase the part of me that still loved him, still remembered who he was before all this. "Has anyone talked to him?" "Directly. We've tried," Elaine said. "But you know Nathan. Pride might as well be his middle name. Especially now, after building his whole life around looking perfect." We exchanged numbers before parting, and she promised to keep me posted if things got worse. I finished my grocery run in a daze, my emotional distance from Nathan beginning to crumble under the weight of new information. At home, I paced the floor, heart heavy, torn between my healing and the lingering instinct to protect. The boundary I'd set with Nathan had saved me. But the thought of him being trapped in a controlling relationship, that was harder to ignore. After days of internal back and forth, I decided to write Nathan a letter. Not a text that could be left on read. Not an email that Lana could filter or delete. A real, handwritten letter, something personal he could open in private, hold in his hands, and read at his own pace. I spent hours drafting and redrafting, carefully removing anything that might come across as blaming or accusatory. I didn't want to provoke his defenses. I just wanted to offer him something I hadn't been able to before, unconditional support, with no expectations attached. The final version read, "Dear Nathan, I'm writing to say that despite everything that's happened, you are still my brother. I care about you and I'm concerned for your well-being. If you ever need someone, whether it's a place to stay, someone to talk to, or just a moment of peace, I'm here. No questions. No judgment. No history rehashed. This isn't about reconciling or fixing the past. It's about leaving a door open. One that you can walk through when and if you're ready. I miss the version of you I used to know. The one who laughed freely, who showed up for people not because it looked good, but because it mattered. I believe he's still there. And when you're ready to reconnect with that part of yourself, I'd like to be part of that journey. With love, Rachel." I mailed it the next day, sending it to Nathan's office downtown instead of his home to avoid the possibility of Lana intercepting it. Then I let it go. I went back to the life I was rebuilding, one centered on growth and healing, not waiting or hoping. Weeks passed. No response. I honored my boundaries, even as I kept that door cracked open, just in case. Spring melted into the sticky warmth of summer. School ended, and I signed on to teach at a summer enrichment program for underserved kids. It was exhausting and wonderful. Some of the students reminded me of Nathan and me when we were little, bright, hopeful, before everything got complicated. Kara pulled me deeper into her world of hiking trails and book clubs, and my relationship with Lucas grew steadier, deeper than I had expected. For the first time in years, I felt like the main character in my own life, not a supporting cast member in Nathan's drama. Then, on a sweltering July evening, everything shifted. I came home sunburned and sandy after a day at Lake Travis with friends and found a small envelope slipped under my apartment door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with just 3 words, written in Nathan's familiar handwriting. I need help. My heart dropped. My hands trembled as I immediately called his cell. No answer. I tried his office, nothing. Panic creeping in, I called Elaine. I haven't seen him in days, she said. But the rumors are getting louder. Derek's firm is in serious legal trouble. They're lawyering up every partner. After several more desperate calls, I grabbed my keys and drove out to Nathan's lakefront house, the one I'd only visited twice. His car wasn't there. No answer at the door. A neighbor said they'd seen him leave that morning. Alone. With a suitcase. I returned home and began calling again. Leaving messages. Emails. Anything. Then I waited, jumping at every sound outside my apartment door. Around midnight, the doorbell finally rang. Nathan stood in the hallway, a small suitcase by his side. Gone were the pressed slacks and luxury watch, the curated confidence and designer outerwear. He wore faded jeans and a plain t-shirt. His face was drawn, puffy from crying, and for the first time in years, he looked less like a stranger and more like the brother I remembered. I didn't know where else to go, he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside. He entered slowly, like someone expecting a lecture or interrogation. But I only asked, "Are you hungry?" That one simple question cracked something open. He nodded, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. While I reheated leftover pasta, he sat at my kitchen counter, shoulders slumped forward. Slowly, piece by piece, the story came out. Lana's carefully curated empire had crumbled. The investment firm her family ran was now under federal investigation for fraud. Their accounts were frozen. The lake house was being seized. And most crushing of all, Lana had quietly transferred their remaining assets into an offshore account, under her name only, before vanishing 3 days earlier. She left me to deal with everything, Nathan said numbly. The lawyers. The investigators. The press. They even took my car. I walked to your apartment from the train station. I slid a plate in front of him. Were you aware of the fraud? He didn't answer right away. Just stared down at the pasta. I suspected, he admitted finally. There were signs. Questions I didn't want answers to. I told myself I was protecting us both by not asking. That I was playing my role, smiling at parties, managing the image, staying out of the details. I didn't want to know the truth. We talked until morning. 6 months of silence unraveled into hours of raw honesty. He told me how deeply he regretted the way he had treated me. How he had let Lana's values replace his own. How the pursuit of status had hollowed him out. I envied you, he said quietly as pale sunlight spilled through the curtains. You seemed so content with who you were. So sure of what mattered. I was constantly chasing validation because I didn't know how to give it to myself. I envied you too, I admitted. Your confidence, your charm. I thought you had it all figured out. He let out a bitter laugh. I didn't have anything figured out. I was just better at pretending. In the days that followed, Nathan slept on my couch while we navigated the wreckage of his life. He met with investigators, filed paperwork for legal separation, and endured the humiliation of public scrutiny. Former friends whispered. Social circles vanished. But through it all, something shifted. The Nathan who emerged wasn't the golden child of our youth or the cold status seeker of recent years. He was someone new. Humbled, but also quietly resilient. I don't know who I am without all the trappings, he confessed one evening, 6 weeks into his stay. I've never had to be just me. For so long, my entire identity was tied to being Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Graves, he said quietly one night as we shared takeout on my small balcony. The perfect house. The designer suits. The life people envied. Now, I said gently, you get to decide who you want to be. He let out a slow breath. It's terrifying, but also somehow freeing. Our relationship rebuilt itself slowly, like a bridge under reconstruction. Each honest conversation added a plank, a bolt. There were setbacks, of course. Moments when old habits crept in. Nathan would make a throwaway remark about how cozy my apartment was, code for small, then immediately wince in regret. I'd get prickly when he rearranged my spice rack without asking, then remind myself that sharing space again meant learning to give grace. 3 months after he'd shown up at my door, Nathan landed a job as an admin assistant at a local housing nonprofit. It was nowhere near his previous salary or title, but he accepted it without complaint. "I want to earn my way back," he told me one night. "Not just financially. I need to feel like someone worth respecting again." To celebrate his new beginning, I suggested hosting a small dinner at my place. Nothing extravagant, just a warm gathering of people who had supported us both through everything: Kara, Grace from school, Lucas, and a couple of Nathan's new coworkers who had welcomed him without judgment. As we set the table together, I noticed Nathan carefully placing each setting, making sure everyone had a seat. He paused, smiling sheepishly as he adjusted his own chair. "Remember the last dinner we had together?" he asked. "How could I forget?" I replied. "You were at the kids' table," he said with a grimace. "And I told you that you weren't important enough for a place setting." "Yes, you did," I said. "You were awful." He laughed softly. "Yeah, I really was. But you're not anymore. That's what matters." The dinner was simple: homemade enchiladas, a couple bottles of wine, music playing low in the background. But the laughter and genuine connection around that little table made it feel more meaningful than any catered event in a lakefront mansion. I watched Nathan talk with Kara about education equity, ask Lucas about his latest hike, and listen as Grace shared a classroom story that had us all in stitches. For the first time in years, I saw my brother not as a man performing a role, but as the person I used to know. After the guests left, we sat out on the balcony again, the city humming quietly below us. "I found Mom's journals while you were staying with me," I said. Nathan looked over. "Yeah." She was worried about us, about how far apart we'd grown. He was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. "She'd be glad we're here now." "I think so," I said, though she might have wished it didn't take all this to bring us back. Nathan chuckled. "Some lessons I only learned the hard way." 6 months after everything fell apart, we stood side by side at our parents' gravesite on the 3rd anniversary of their passing. In years past, we'd visited separately, carefully avoiding each other. But this time, we brought flowers together. We shared memories, not distance. As we walked back to our cars, Nathan paused. "I never properly thanked you," he said, "for taking me in, for not rubbing it in, for helping me become someone better." "That's what family does," I replied. "The real kind," he said, meeting my eyes. "Not the kind that just looks good in photos." I nodded. "You're becoming the real kind now." "I'm trying," he said. "Every day." "You're doing it," I told him gently. "You're rebuilding. And it shows." Our relationship will never return to what it was in childhood. Too much has passed, too many sharp words, too many painful realizations. But what we're creating now feels stronger, not despite the cracks, but because we chose to mend them, slowly and intentionally. I've learned that family isn't about tolerating hurt just because you share a name. It's about holding space for change, for accountability, for redemption. Nathan has learned that worth doesn't come from status or image. It's rooted in integrity, in showing up when it counts. Together, we've discovered that sometimes the most important seat at the table is the one you claim for yourself, with dignity and self-respect. If you've ever struggled with family members who didn't see your value, I hope our story reminds you, standing up for yourself can shift everything. Not only how others see you, but how you see you. The relationships worth fighting for are the ones that let you be fully yourself. Not just useful. Not just convenient. Seen. Heard. Loved for who you are. Thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it resonated with you, please tap the like button and subscribe for more stories of healing, growth, and second chances. Have you ever had to set boundaries with someone you love? How did it change things? Share your experience in the comments. And remember, sometimes walking away is the first step towards something more real. I'm grateful to be walking that path with all of you.